Detective Maria Santos studied the security footage for the third time, her weathered face reflecting years of dealing with neighborhood disputes that escalated beyond reason. Across from her desk, David and Sarah sat rigidly, while Tom Morrison fidgeted with his car keys, clearly uncomfortable in the sterile police station environment. "This is pretty damning evidence," Santos said finally, pausing the video at the moment Margaret hurled stones into the pool. "Criminal mischief, destruction of property, trespassing. The damage estimate you provided puts this in felony territory." David leaned forward. "What about the false police report she filed? The insurance fraud accusations? Those are additional charges?" "Yes." Santos made notes in her file. "But, I have to warn, you, Mrs. Whitmore, has been a pillar of this community for over a decade. Her husband sits on the City Planning Commission. This won't be a simple arrest and prosecution." Sarah's jaw tightened. "Are you saying she's above the law?" "I'm saying prepare for a fight." Santos met her gaze directly. "Rich, connected people don't go down easy. They hire expensive lawyers who specialize in discrediting evidence and witnesses." As they left the police station, David felt a familiar weight settling on his shoulders. Even with video proof, even with clear criminal behavior, the system seemed designed to protect people like Margaret while grinding down families like his. But that afternoon brought an unexpected phone call that would change everything. "Mr. Chen, this is Patricia Valdez. I got your number from Tom Morrison." The woman's voice was hesitant but determined. He said, "You might be having trouble with Margaret Whitmore." David's pulse quickened. "Yes, we are. Why?" "Because she destroyed my garden 3 years ago. Killed my roses, poisoned my vegetable patch, then convinced the HOA to fine me for failing to maintain acceptable landscaping standards." Within an hour, Patricia sat in their living room, a manila folder thick with photographs and documents spread across the coffee table. She was a small woman in her 60s, with silver hair and hands that bore the calluses of decades spent coaxing life from soil. "Margaret claimed my roses were attracting bees that posed a safety hazard to the neighborhood," Patricia explained, her voice shaking with suppressed anger. "She got the board to pass an emergency ordinance banning aggressive flowering plants from front yards." Sarah stared at the photographs showing Patricia's once magnificent garden reduced to withered stalks and brown earth. "This is beautiful work. Why would anyone destroy something so lovely?" Patricia's laugh was bitter. "Because my late husband was Mexican, and Margaret never let me forget it. She'd make comments about authentic landscaping and whether I had proper documentation for my plantings." Her eyes hardened. "The day after Roberto's funeral, she left a note in my mailbox suggesting I might be more comfortable in a neighborhood that better reflected my cultural preferences." David felt sick. "Did you report this?" "To who?" Margaret was already HOA president. "The police said it was a civil matter. My neighbors, ... double quotes, Patricia shrugged helplessly. "Margaret controls the community newsletter, the social events, even which contractors get recommended for home repairs. Cross her, and suddenly your life becomes very difficult." That evening, word spread through an underground network of whispered conversations and careful phone calls. By the next morning, David's phone was ringing constantly. Mrs. Rodriguez from Elm Street, Margaret had her car towed from her own driveway, claiming it violated parking regulations that didn't exist in the HOA charter. The Johnsons from Oak Avenue, Margaret, had filed noise complaints. Every time their teenage son practiced basketball in their driveway, eventually forcing them to install expensive soundproofing. Dr. Ahmed from Pine Circle, Margaret had launched a campaign questioning his foreign medical credentials after he'd disagreed with her during a board meeting about community pool hours. By week's end, David had documented 17 separate incidents spanning 8 years of pattern of harassment, discrimination, and abuse of power that painted Margaret not as a concerned community leader, but as a neighborhood tyrant who wielded the HOA like a personal weapon. The breaking point came when Rebecca Martinez contacted them. Rebecca was barely 25, a single mother working 2 jobs to afford her small townhouse on the edge of Maple Grove. She arrived at the Chen house after her evening shift, still wearing her restaurant uniform. Her 4-year-old son, Miguel, sleeping in her arms. "She tried to take my home," Rebecca said simply, settling Miguel on the couch. Last year, Margaret decided my daycare business was a commercial enterprise that violated residential zoning. She got the city to launch an investigation, filed complaints with the state licensing board, even called Child Protective Services, claiming I was endangering children in an unregulated environment. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. A licensed daycare is endangering children. That's what I kept saying. But suddenly, I was drowning in legal fees, inspection costs, documentation requirements. I had to close the daycare, which meant losing half my income. Rebecca's voice cracked. I almost lost the house. Had to move in with my mother for 6 months until I could get back on my feet. David studied the young woman's exhausted face, thinking about Emma, about all the children who'd been affected by Margaret's crusade. Rebecca, would you be willing to testify? To go on record about what she did? Rebecca looked down at her sleeping son, her jaw setting with determination. If it means stopping her from hurting other families, yes, I'll testify. That night, David sat in his office organizing the mountain of evidence they'd accumulated. Photographs, emails, police reports, witness statements, a comprehensive portrait of systematic abuse spanning nearly a decade. But, as he worked, a nagging worry gnawed at him. His phone rang at nearly midnight. The caller ID showed Detective Santos. Mr. Chen, I need to warn you about something. Her voice was tense. Mrs. Whitmore came in this afternoon with her attorney. They're claiming you've been harassing her, organizing some kind of neighborhood conspiracy to damage her reputation. David's blood chilled. That's ridiculous. We're documenting crimes she committed. I know that, and you know that, but she's filed a restraining order request, claiming you've been conducting surveillance on her property, encouraging others to make false accusations, and creating a hostile environment that's affecting her health and safety. She's the one who committed felonies. We have video proof, which her lawyer is claiming was doctored. They've hired a digital forensics expert who says the timestamp and audio don't match, that the footage has been manipulated to frame an innocent woman. David sank into his chair, the weight of Margaret's counterattack hitting him like a physical blow. So, what happens now? Now it gets complicated. Her lawyer is good. He's already filed motions to suppress the video evidence, claiming it was obtained illegally without proper consent for surveillance across property lines. Santos paused. David, this woman is playing hardball. She's not just defending herself, she's going on the offensive. Before Margaret's strategy was becoming clear, she would use her resources and connections to turn the legal system against them, portraying herself as the victim of a coordinated attack by disgruntled neighbors. But as dawn broke over Maple Grove, David realized something that filled him with cold determination. Margaret had made one crucial mistake in her counterattack sheet. Assumed that the families she'd terrorized would scatter when faced with legal pressure, that they'd retreat into silence rather than risk further retaliation. She'd underestimated the power of people who had nothing left to lose. By morning, David's phone was ringing again. But this time, it wasn't more victims calling for help. It was reporters, civil rights attorneys, and community activists who'd gotten wind of Margaret's systematic campaign of harassment. The story was about to explode beyond the confines of Maple Grove, and Margaret Whitmore was about to discover that some fights can't be won with money and connections alone. 5-gallon bucket of motor oil into my pristine pool at 3 a.m. But when I stormed over to confront her, ready for war, I found her collapsed on her kitchen floor, screaming through tears I'd never seen before. What she told me next would shatter everything I thought I knew about the woman who'd been terrorizing my family for months. Marcus Chen stood at his kitchen window, coffee mug frozen halfway to his lips, staring at the black slick spreading across his pool like spilled ink. The morning sun caught the oil's surface, creating an iridescent rainbow that would have been beautiful if it weren't destroying everything he'd worked for. Sarah, his voice cracked as he called to his wife. You need to see this. Sarah appeared. In the doorway, still in her scrubs from her overnight shift at the hospital, dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her usually perfect ponytail hung limp against her neck. What's wrong now? Marcus pointed toward the backyard. Sarah's sharp intake of breath told him she saw it to their crystal-clear pool, the one they'd saved 3 years to install, now resembled a toxic waste dump. Oh my God, Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. Marcus, that's going to cost $15,000 minimum. His jaw clenched so tight his molars ached. We'll have to drain it completely, replace the filtration system, probably resurface the entire thing. Their 8-year-old daughter, Emma, burst into the kitchen, backpack bouncing against her shoulders. "Dad, can I swim?" before she stopped mid-sentence, following their horrified gazes. "What happened to our pool?" Marcus knelt beside Emma, his hands trembling with barely contained rage. "Someone hurt our pool, sweetheart. You can't swim today." Emma's face crumpled. "But I promised Zoe I'd show her my new diving trick after school." Sarah placed a protective hand on Emma's shoulder. "We'll figure something out, baby. Maybe we can use the community pool. It's not the same." Emma's voice rose to a wail. "This is our pool." Why would someone do this? Marcus stood slowly, his mind already racing through the possibilities. The Hendersons were on vacation. The Patels had always been friendly. That left only one neighbor with both motive and opportunity. Linda Kovac. For the past 6 months, Linda had waged a campaign of petty warfare against their family. It started when Marcus had politely asked her to trim the branches hanging over their property line. Her response had been swift and vicious noise, complaints filed with the HOA for Emma's birthday party. Claims that their outdoor lights were too bright, accusations that their dog was destroying her prize-winning roses. But this was escalation, beyond anything he'd imagined. "I'm calling the police," Sarah said, already reaching for her phone. "Wait!" Marcus grabbed her wrist gently. "Let me check the security cameras first. We need proof." He pulled up the Ring app on his phone, scrolling back through the night's footage. There, 3:17 a.m., a figure emerged from the shadows between the houses, moving with purpose toward their pool. The motion-activated floodlights blazed to life, illuminating Linda Kovac's face as clearly as if she were posing for a portrait. She wore dark clothing and latex gloves. In her hands, a large plastic container. Marcus watched in sick fascination. As his neighbor methodically poured what appeared to be motor oil into his pool, pausing twice to ensure complete coverage, that calculating which, Sarah breathed over his shoulder. She planned this. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from his contractor. "Buddy Jake, heard about your pool situation through the neighborhood chat. Sorry, man. Full remediation on that. Kind of contamination runs $22 to $5K. Easy. Insurance won't cover vandalism unless you can prove it. $25,000. Marcus felt the number like a punch to his solar plexus. They'd already stretched their budget thin with Sarah's student loans and Emma's private school tuition. This would wipe out their emergency fund and then some. Daddy Emma tugged at his shirt. "Are you okay? You look scary," Marcus forced, his features into something resembling calm. "I'm fine, princess. Why don't you get ready for school? Mom will drive you today." After Emma disappeared upstairs, Sarah moved closer to Marcus. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking Linda Kovac just made the biggest mistake of her life." "Marcus, please, let's handle this legally. Call the police, file a report, let the system. Marcus laughed bitterly. "The same system that's ignored every complaint we've filed against her. The same HOA that told us to work it out neighborly when she called CPS claiming we were neglecting Emma." Sarah's face paled. She didn't. 2 months ago. "I didn't tell you because you were already stressed about your board exams." Marcus ran a hand through his hair. They investigated, found nothing obviously, but Emma had nightmares for weeks after those social workers showed up. "I should have known. She seemed so anxious around that time." Sarah's voice dropped dangerous. "That woman tried to destroy our family, and now she's trying to destroy us financially." Marcus pocketed his phone. "I'm going over there." "Marcus? No. You're too angry right now. Let me come with you. You need to get Emma to school and yourself to bed." "You've been up for 18 hours?" Sarah grabbed his arm. "Promise me you won't do anything stupid." Marcus kissed her forehead, but didn't promise he couldn't. Not when Linda Kovac had just declared war on everything he held dear. The walk to Linda's house felt like a death march. With each step, Marcus's anger crystallized into something harder, more focused. He'd tried being reasonable. He'd tried following proper channels. He'd tried turning the other cheek when she'd attacked his parenting, his property, his peace of mind. No more. Linda's front yard was immaculate, as always, every blade of grass precisely trimmed, every flower bed geometrically perfect. Her white picket fence stood like a fortress around her property. complete with private property and no solicitor signs posted every few feet. Marcus didn't bother with the gate. He vaulted over the fence and strode to her front door. His first knock was controlled. Professional, the kind of knock a reasonable neighbor might use. No answer. His second knock rattled the doorframe. Still nothing. By the third knock, Marcus was using his fist like a battering ram. "Linda, open up. I know what you did." A curtain twitched in an upstairs window. He caught a glimpse of Linda's face pale, frightened but defiant. "I saw the footage," Marcus shouted. "You're not hiding from this." He tried the door handle. Locked, but the old Victorian's wood was soft with age. One solid shoulder check, and the door exploded inward. Marcus stepped into Linda's living room, adrenaline surging through his veins. "Linda, get down here." What he found made him freeze mid-stride. Linda Kovac wasn't hiding upstairs. She was collapsed on her kitchen floor, sobbing with an intensity that seemed to shake the entire house. Her carefully styled gray hair hung in wild tangles around her face. Her usually pristine clothes were wrinkled and stained. But it was the sound that stopped Marcus Colddraw, anguished screaming that spoke of pain far deeper than anything he could inflict. "Please," Linda gasped between sobs. "Please don't hurt me. I know what I did. I know it was wrong." But you don't understand. Marcus stood frozen in her doorway, his righteous anger suddenly complicated by the broken woman before him. "I'm dying," Linda whispered. "I'm dying, and I just wanted someone to hurt as much as I do." Marcus stood paralyzed in Linda's kitchen doorway, his prepared speech of righteous fury dying in his throat. The woman before him bore no resemblance to the meticulously groomed neighbor who'd made his life hell for months. This Linda was hollowed, outbroken a ghost, wearing his enemy's face. "What did you just say?" His voice came out, barely above a whisper. Linda pulled herself into a sitting position against the kitchen cabinet, her movements slow and painful. Her hands shook as she wiped tears from her cheeks, leaving mascara streaks like war paint. Stage 4, pancreatic cancer. The words fell between them like stones. Diagnosed 3 months ago, 6 weeks to live, maybe 8 if I'm unlucky. Marcus felt the world tilt sideways. That's impossible. You were gardening yesterday. You were filing noise complaints and making your life miserable. Yes, Linda's laugh was bitter, hollow. Amazing what adrenaline and spite can accomplish when you're running on borrowed time. The kitchen around them was chaos, piled in the sink, prescription bottles scattered across the counter, a hospital bracelet discarded on the floor. The woman who'd once threatened to call code enforcement over Marcus's garbage bins being 6 inches too close to the street had let her own world crumble. Why, Marcus stepped closer, his anger warring with a confusion he didn't want to feel. "Why would Youth-A-Pool cost us everything, Linda? $25,000 we don't have. Because you have everything." Linda's voice cracked. "You have your beautiful wife, your perfect daughter, your whole life ahead of you. Do you know what it's like to watch happiness through your window when you're dying alone? So you decided to destroy us. I decided to make you feel something. Anything." Linda struggled to her feet, gripping the counter for support. "For 6 months, I watched your family barbecue in your backyard. I watched Emma learn to dive while I was scheduling chemotherapy appointments. I watched Sarah come home from saving lives while I was planning my funeral." Marcus noticed the yellow, tinged to Linda's skin, the way her clothes hung loose on her frame. Signs he'd been too angry to see before. The noise complaints, the HOA violations, calling CPS, all of it. Linda nodded. "To shatter your perfect little bubble, make you understand what it feels like when everything good gets ripped away. You could have killed Emma if she'd gotten in that pool." Linda's face crumpled. The oil was vegetable oil mixed with food coloring. Disgusting. Expensive to clean, but harmless. "I'm bitter, Marcus. I'm not a monster." The admission hit Marcus like a physical blow. Vegetable oil. Harmless. His mind raced back to Jake's text about remediation costs, but if it was just vegetable oil, you let me think it was motor oil. You let me think you'd poisoned our pool. I wanted you to feel what I feel every morning when I wake up, that sick terror in your stomach, when you realize everything you love is slipping away. Marcus sank into one of Linda's kitchen chairs, his legs suddenly unable to support him. "Jesus, Linda, we would have helped if you'd just told you what? That the crazy neighbor lady is dying. Would you have invited me to Emma's birthday party?" Would Sarah have checked on me after her hospital shifts? Linda's voice rose, sharp with pain. Or would you have just felt sorry for me and counted the days until the problem solved itself? The honesty in her words cut deep because Marcus knew she was right. They'd written Linda off as the neighborhood crank months ago. Even if they'd known about her diagnosis, would they have truly opened their hearts to her? There's no family, Linda continued. No children, no husband. My sister lives in Oregon and hasn't spoken to me in 5 years. Do you know what it's like to face death completely alone? Marcus thought of Sarah sleeping peacefully upstairs after her night shift, of Emma practicing her dive routine, of the life they'd built together. No, I don't. I was a teacher for 37 years. 3rd grade. I had a classroom full of children who loved me every year. And now, ... Linda gestured weakly around her empty house. Now I have nothing. No legacy. No one to remember me. That's not true. It is true. Linda slammed her palm against the counter, then immediately winced in pain. Do you know how many former students have reached out since I retired? 0. How many fellow teachers visit? None. I devoted my entire life to other people's children, and when my time came, I was invisible. Marcus watched Linda crumble back against the cabinet, and something shifted inside his chest. The anger was still there, but it was complicated. Now by something he didn't want to name: pity, understanding, maybe even guilt. The pool can be fixed, he found himself saying. With what money? I know exactly how much remediation costs for contaminated water. I researched it thoroughly before I acted. Why are you telling me this? Any of it? Linda looked at him with eyes that seemed decades older than her 63 years. Because I'm tired of being angry. It takes so much energy to hate, and I don't have much left. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Everything okay? Emma's asking if the pool will be fixed by her birthday party next week. Next week, Emma's 9th birthday. They'd planned to have the whole class over for a pool party. Had sent invitations weeks ago. Your daughter's birthday is next week, Linda said quietly, somehow reading his expression. Pool party, 20 kids. I'll have to cancel, disappoint her again. Marcus rubbed his face with both hands. She's been so excited. I ruined her birthday. Yeah, you did. They sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of Linda's revelation settling between them like sediment. Marcus found himself studying her face, seeing past his own anger to the pain etched in every line. How long have you lived here? He asked suddenly. 42 years. Bought this house when I was 21, fresh out of college. Thought I'd fill it with children and grandchildren. Someday. What happened? Linda's smile was heartbreaking. Life. My fiancée died in a car accident when I was 25. I threw myself into teaching, told myself there would be time for love later. Later never came. Marcus thought of his own love. Story with Sarah meeting in college, the proposal by the lake, Emma's first steps in this very neighborhood. How easily it all could have been different. The pool, Linda said suddenly. I have money, my life insurance, my retirement savings. I'll pay for the cleanup. Linda, it's not charity, it's restitution. Her voice grew stronger. I did. The crime? I'll do the time. Or whatever time I have left. Marcus pulled out his phone and called Jake back. Hey, it's Marcus. That pool situation, hypothetically, if it was vegetable oil instead of motor oil, what are we looking at? Vegetable oil. Dude, that's just a really expensive pool cleaning. Couple thousand max, depending on how much you used. Way different from toxic contamination. Relief flooded through Marcus so intensely he felt dizzy. Thanks, man. I'll call you back. Linda watched him carefully. Better news. Much better. Marcus hesitated, then made a decision that surprised even him. But I'm not letting you pay for it. Marcus, you're dying, Linda. You should spend your money on yourself. Bucket list items, travel, whatever brings you peace. Why would you after everything I've done? Because you're right. We would have helped if we'd known. We should have been better neighbors. Marcus stood up, his mind racing with possibility. Emma's birthday party is next week. The pool will be clean by then. Linda's face went very still. Why are you telling me that? Marcus met her eyes, seeing not his tormentor but a lonely woman facing her final weeks alone. Because you're invited. The silence stretched between them, heavy with years of missed connections and misunderstandings. Finally, Linda whispered, "I don't have a gift. Just bring yourself. Emma's been asking about the fancy lady next door for months. She wants to see your rose garden." Linda began to cry again, but these tears were different, softer, grateful. "I don't deserve your kindness. Maybe not. But you deserve not to die alone." As Marcus turned to leave, Linda called out to him, "Marcus, thank you for not calling the police, for giving me a chance to make this right. We all deserve a chance to make things right, Linda. The question is what we do with it." Walking back to his house, Marcus felt the weight of the morning's revelations settling over him. He'd gone to Linda's house seeking justice and found something far more complicated, a reminder that everyone carries invisible burdens, and sometimes the people who hurt us most are drowning in their own pain. Now he had to figure out how to explain to Sarah that their enemy had become their responsibility, and that sometimes the most important battles aren't about winning, but about choosing compassion over conquest.